So the most important thing I've learned, I think, is that psychology and spirituality are not separate. So I think that people think when they of spirituality as like it's separate from, but I now, even more so now, probably just in the past couple of years, have really seen how cohesive the two are and how they walk really hand in hand. And I don't think you can be fully spiritual without being psychologically minded. And I don't think you can be psychologically, I mean, you can be, but I think it's more effective to be psychologically minded and spiritually minded. And that to me is really where the magic happens. And I love so much that it's, I sort of thought, okay, this will be a podcast all about kind of death and what happens when we die. And then it's sort of morphed into consciousness and quantum healing and all these different ideas around how we can really live more fully now and how we can use death to inform how we live now, which I always thought death informing how we live now would be more what the podcast was about. And so I think I'm always learning, I'm continuing to learn. And that's what I love about the work. Gosh, I mean, I think that certainly my early experiences with my aunt were really proof to me. However, it's kind of like they're saying the vaccine is, it wanes over time. And so for me, it feels like I'm always wanting or looking for more. And sometimes, I shouldn't say I'm always looking for more because I believe it, but I do appreciate the other side continuing to show me and guide me, whether it's 444 that shows up for me all the time. I think I had a really powerful experience that I shared a while back when my friend's husband passed away, and they, at his funeral, he was 44 years old when he died. He had a long illness. He had a brain tumor, and he was mostly well, even though he was fighting cancer, but he was really sick at the end. And my girlfriend was actually someone who doubted. She was my very, very dear friend, but she really doubted this for me. And I remember when I was really first starting to open up to spirituality and things were starting to happen in my house, and lights were flickering and all kinds of stuff was happening. And I called her to say, hey, I'm exploring this. And the first thing she said to me was, why are you always looking to do more? You're always looking for more. You're always looking for more answers. Why aren't you ever satisfied just with things the way they are? And it was really hurtful for me at the time because I was like, you're my closest friend. You should be a supporter. Like it shouldn't matter. And so I shut down that side of myself. I didn't tell a lot of people about it. Fast forward to 10 years later, as her husband is dying, and now she's a believer. And as he was dying, I was communicating with him. He wasn't conscious, but I would be able to say, hey, he really wants the windows open, and he'd love for you to play this song. And she'd be like, oh my God, that was his favorite song. And then when he died, I said to him at his funeral, everybody was talking about his dislike for mayonnaise. He hated it. And I said to him as I was leaving, come on, Darren, if you really want to show me, because I always still need this validation, if you really want to show me that you're okay and that you're on the other side, I need mayo. Like I was that specific, but I need mayo.
Mayo from the other side.
Mayo from the other side, right?
I love this story.
I see a new Adele song, Mayo from the Other Side.
Right.
And so the night after his funeral, it was a Friday night, and this other podcast host who hosts this podcast called Terrible Things for Asking, she also lost her husband to brain tumor. And my girlfriend had been listening to this podcast for months. The woman was in town doing a book signing, but my friend couldn't go because she had a service for her husband that night and was sitting Shiva. And so I said I would go, and I videoed the whole thing, and I got her a book signed for her. And I was on my way home, and I turned the corner, and in front of the old building where I lived, for which the address was 444, was a car with a license plate that said Mayo on it.
Oh,
And yeah,
I
and
love
I
it.
was literally like, and I couldn't take a picture right then. So I went around the block, and I was so nervous the car was going to move. Like, I don't know how, but it was a parked car. And I went around the block, and I got out of my car, and I took a picture, and I sent it to her, and I said, "You're never going to believe this, but I saw this license plate," and she was floored. And so I think that to me, I don't know how else you explain that other than there is something bigger, there is something more, there's something greater. I don't know what it is. I think I know what it is. But it's just awe-inspiring to me. And so I love those little reminders always, because it brings me back, and it really takes my breath away in the moment, but it also brings me to this place of just like awe of the universe. And then that grounds me, and I can kind of get out of like, why is my son complaining that he didn't get a Hanukkah present tonight? Like, serious, or that the robe didn't fit. And the like earthly, the earthly worries, right? Because those are real too. But then sometimes I feel like I don't want to get caught up in those. I love to also live in that space between, not to pun my podcast, but I always am looking to bring something new to every episode, and trying so hard to not repeat, even though I read somewhere like it's okay to repeat because people need to hear things multiple times. And so I think when I'm listening for what can I bring to my listeners that is going to be different in this story? How can I pull something different from what I hear? So that when my listener listens, they're not like, oh, we just heard someone who talked about this before. But how can I bring a different angle to it that maybe they didn't hear before? But the part that I love about me producing my own show is that I get to read the books, I get to ask the questions, I get to underline what is different about this guest than any other guest that I've had on. And no one else is going to know that except PJ, who's listened to every episode and written all the show notes for it, or me. You know, there's a lot of people out there right now practicing mediumship, wanting to be seen as like a medium or an intuitive or whatever it is. And I really want to be careful about maintaining the integrity of what I'm doing, because that's always been really important to me, is that integrity is sort of at the top of what I do, and that the guests that I have on have a lot of integrity about what they do. It hasn't been a problem yet, but I'm starting to have just kind of people reach out and say, hey, I'm a medium and I would love to be on your show, or hey, I'm this and I want to be on your show. And I really, because I so value the craft of mediumship, and I don't practice it because I don't think I can get messages, but I'm not consistent enough that I want to put myself out there in that way. There's other people who are really gifted in that, and I don't believe that's my gift. But I really want people to know that if they do want to go that route, there are some really amazing mediums that can help with healing. And then there's some people who might have similar skills to me. Sometimes they're able to connect, sometimes they're not. It's sort of vague, but then it leaves more doubt for people. And I think that undermines the credibility for others. is like looking at every encounter and situation and thinking about how can I use this to grow my own consciousness, to grow my own awareness, to grow my own soul. What is this? It sounds so cliche, but like, what is this always trying to teach me? Why is this happening right now? It's like this constant, almost like interplay in my mind of always trying to make sense of it all, which I love. And it's exhausting sometimes. I think, how I've always kind of viewed this is that this has been my journey, and that they're their own little spiritual creatures and they have their own journeys to be on, whatever those journeys are. I mean, I do talk with them openly, like when loved ones have passed away, about, signs and things like that. And I talk about mindfulness and breathing and, feelings in our bodies and how we hold those and why it's important to let them go. But I really try, from both a spiritual perspective and a psychological perspective, to be their mom and to model for them what that looks like, but not like shove it down their throats. Because if they're going to come to this, I want them to come to it because they've seen me model it for them and seen what it's like they know when they see me sitting on the couch, I'm meditating, or when they come downstairs, like I try to meditate after I work out in the morning, that I'm meditating, and they'll be like, oh, mom's meditating. And so they know that, but I don't make them do that. I don't say, oh, well, this happened to you, so what's the lesson in that? What do you think, your soul's here to teach you? Because I think that might just result in resistance, and maybe this will never be part of their journey, and that's okay. They're here for their own little purposes. And I want to respect that. And their journey might have nothing to do with anything spiritual, and that's okay. Always I'm kind of in that curious, skeptical place, which I think keeps it really real for me. It's like, okay, that's okay to be skeptical. That's okay to wonder. Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.